I was able to get a lot of fun sounds out of this, cheap little multi-effects pedal. And I think that's important because when we talk about why does this all matter, because music is complicated, more so than sometimes we're taught in music therapy school. Sometimes we're given basically the stereotype or the caricature of a genre. And, you can't like slap on a rhythm and automatically be X genre. And that's not even to mention once you step outside of Western music and step out of US music. So we want to kind of posit that you can learn a lot about effects and you can learn a lot about recreating sounds and being experimental and helping your clients experiment and learn how to make sounds and different things like that. But the guitar pedals give you a kind of nice way that you can explore that is tangible and tactile. So we're going to go through our pedal boards a little bit and show you our different stuff. We're going to give you some budget recommendations. But so Jesse,
Hmm.
they have a computer, they probably have GarageBand. Why should they even think about this idea of getting a pedal when it's all like, a lot of this is free in GarageBand and things like
Sure, sure. Yeah. So for me, I think of them, I've gotten to the point where they kind of go together and they've become streamlined, but for me, they really hold two separate applications. I think about the DAW and the GarageBand and things like that is really working within the recording process. And I tend to think about pedals and effects as sort of more of the live process. And they can, of course, go together, but I think there's something great about this idea of um, being in the feel of like what it's like to be adding effects live, being able to work with like the knobs and switches and kind of get like just real into the grit of it and changing and modulating effects live. Um, and of course, there's this really cool sort of modular effect that you were alluding to earlier, which is that not only can I add essentially probably unlimited amounts of effects, but the order in which they're set up can uniquely change, the way that they come across. And so it can be cool to see like how does what's the difference between feeding a distortion into a reverb, for example, versus feeding a reverb into a distortion, right? Which
that.
give you very different sounds, and they're both really cool. Um, one might be a little more traditional rock. One might be like the super atmospheric sort of shoegaze type of sound, right?
Like explosions in the sky or something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, totally.
Very cool.
So I think that's for me a huge draw to it. And then, like you spoke to earlier, there's this idea of like I think being authentic to the music itself,
Hmm.
and that I guess electronic music, it has its own software, its own hardware, but often when we think about guitar effects and pedals, there's this idea of like having this very tangible setup and getting into that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think sometimes now some of the rigs of famous musicians can be notoriously out of a regular person's price range. But there are a lot of pedals and effects that were actually the effect that's recorded on an album too. So we didn't even talk about that the last time we were chatting, but yeah, we can actually get the dimension chorus sound that's on Purple Rain. Like things like that. Like you can get the exact effect or a very similar one. Um, and before we kind of like get way down in the rabbit hole, uh, like Jesse said, we didn't even include any information on how to plug them in and what order and things like that, which is super important. And there's also a lot of good tutorials all over. There's a lot of good YouTube tutorials. There's a lot of good articles. So if you really get in the weeds with any of this, first you can always reach out to us. Our info will all be on the Nook website. If you just want to figure things out and work through on your own, there's a lot of stuff online. We'll probably follow up with some more content in the future.